Hello and welcome to my tutorial on Hakchi, the program that can help you enhance your SNES and NES console and allow it to do many things that common emulators on PCs can do now, but in a smaller form factor. There's tons of tutorials that are out there, lots of excellent ones. I've used them myself, but at this point the product is a little bit more mature, and this is going to allow you to go through a complex build from start to finish. The first thing we're going to do, though, is we're going to cover the very basics, because without them, we're not going to be able to do much else. So for right now, keep in mind that all you need is Hakchi CE 3.5.2, or whatever the latest build happens to be online. You can find it from Hakchi's website at hakchiresources.com. And if you scroll down below, you'll see the Hakchi 2 CE Community Edition version 3.5.2 or later. You can download that link. Afterwards, you're going to extract it to a safe place on your hard drive. I recommend putting it on a separate drive, but you can do whatever makes the most sense to you. Without getting into the too complex of routines for right now, I'm also going to mention Darkakuma's SFROM tool. If all you're planning on doing is adding Super Nintendo games to your system, this is going to help compatibility for certain ROMs that are a little bit more troublesome for the program in question. Right now the site is down, but if you go in, you'll be able to download the extension as well as any sort of patches for the various games. I'll cover that early on in this tutorial. So for right now, let's just get it started. I can't provide you the links to the ROMs. I know that's a tired refrain, but they're out there. You can find them fairly easy if you're looking for them. Of course, I'm not condoning it, but you do whatever you please. So what I do when I began this, I'm using an external mod. This is something that probably if you're getting into it right now and you're looking at my video, you're going to be looking at the opportunity to make this as big as you want it to be. You don't need to do this, but it's my suggestion. This Hakchi small batch is where I actually extracted the Hakchi folder. So it's got all the basic stuff in it for right now. If we go into the SFROM tool from Darkakuma, you're going to put in all of the extracted folder that's there. And if you want to grab as many patches, I grabbed them all that were readily available. You can put them inside the patches folder as well. So that's the start of it. Now we're just going to launch Hakchi CE 3.5.2. You'll probably get some pop-up windows when you do yours. You can click through them. Most of them are just letting you know the advancements that the different builds had. It's going to default regardless to the NES USA collection. This is an image, so if you end up hooking up your SNES Classic and you decide to go through the steps without changing this first to whatever model you've got, you're going to actually load on probably the wrong folder structure for what you're looking for. So my suggestion is just make sure that this current games collection is selected to the model that you've got. The very top is pretty straightforward. Original games are going to have the main entries that are already loaded onto the system. And then down below, you're going to have different games that you're going to add later on. None of these are present when you first start. So you're going to start with the basics. We want to get the system prepared. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to Kernel, Install Repair. Do you want to flash the custom kernel? You say yes. An on-screen prompt's going to show up. It's going to tell you to make sure the power button on your NES and SNES Mini is switched off. Reconnect the system with a USB cable. Hold the reset button or the second button on the SNES Classic and turn on the power switch. After a few seconds, it's going to recycle. The debugging menu is going to scroll incredibly fast as it goes through the process of actually building the custom kernel. And all that's going to do is prepare it so you can do the rest of what you need to do. Now, as far as getting ROMs onto there, all you've got to do is go into your ROMs folder. For right now, I'm just going to make it very, very simple. We'll go into Mega Man. We'll go to Mega Man Classics. bring up Hakchi. You can drag them all at once, or you can drag them individually. For right now, we're just going to show what happens when we grab Mega Man 7 and push it over. It's going to scroll through, and now Mega Man 7 is listed in the new apps here. Later on, it's going to be connected to whatever emulator I choose it to be. If we click on these, they don't show the box art, but they have their own assigned to it based on the system internal memory. So here, we don't. So there's a couple of things you can do. You can either go into Browse and find the box art that you saved on your computer, or you can simply hit Google. Google is going to come up with a variety of different options. Just choose the clearest one, and bam, it's there. Now, the SROM tool has to be enabled if you want to use the special patches that are available for your games. There's a couple other things that you may want to be aware of for right now. Use linked sync is going to come into play if you're making an advanced build. And you probably are, but this allows you to cut down some of the load time required to rebuild this list as you're updating and installing new hardware. Okay, you've got your English language settings. As far as the tools here, we'll talk about Boot Splash at a later point. We're just going to make sure that we're not missing anything important. Sort by categories. These will be more useful as your system gets bigger. You can go by name for a long list. Core is going to be more helpful, I think, for most people's use, but you can also assign it to the actual systems that are available. In the settings, I make sure that separate game storage is selected. This is useful if you're going to be running the different versions of the classic systems off of the one console. If that doesn't make much sense, these squash FS files down here, these are essentially the images for the different versions of the console that were released regions in their various regions. You have the Europe SNES, you've got the Super Famicom, you have Famicom, you have a special release that was released in Japan called Shonen Jump, which had a lot of TV programs from Toei Animation. But that's basically it. And by separating the games drives, when you go to these down here under the current games collection, you're actually able to put these all onto different systems, and it'll make sure that you're not just resyncing a huge collection every time. All right, so once that's on, all you've got to do is either sync the system. If you're using just the regular system and you want to add a few games for the Super Nintendo, you can do so. It's got about 40 to 50 games that you can load onto it without much trouble, and they'll all load just fine. You're also able to, if you've got a USB key, able to move everything over to the Export Games folder. We're going to cover that in the next lesson, but for right now, this tells us exactly what you need to know. You need to download Hakchi CE. You need to flash a custom kernel with the install repair. You need to drag and drop any SNES titles that you want over here. If you want them running optimally on the emulator, or sorry, on the console, you're going to want to make sure the SFROM tool under settings is enabled and that you've got Akuma's tool inside your Hakchi folder. We're going to cover cores in the next update. We're going to cover the external mod right afterwards. And then slowly but surely, we're going to pick away at some of the more complex problems you might run into. Things that are going to be sort of quality of living options so you don't beat your head against the wall while you're trying to build your favorite system. All right, well, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you later.